Hello again and welcome to another short video related to animation. And with this video I want to talk about another principle of animation called staging. I have here my bouncing ball arcs file because it will be here that I will make an exercise to work with this staging principle. But before starting working, let's better understand what is staging. I like the comparison with the technique used by magicians called misdirection. That is when they get the viewer looking away from something that they don't want to be seen. And this way of controlling our audience attention is what we want for staging. So in animation, it's very important to avoid overlapping actions. The viewer needs to be guided and we must ensure that the narrative is followed. And another thing, it's very important to keep in mind that staging is not only related to animation itself, but also where we put our elements. So, for example, placing trees on the edges of our frame will bring the attention that something will happen in the center. Another example is found when making characters. So for example, if you think about Mickey Mouse, we will not see in a side view because we see that these ears are overlapped, and when we see Mickey Mouse usually is in this perspective. So we can see more details that help to better understand the clear silhouette of the character. In short, staging is the presentation of an idea that is absolutely clear to the viewer. So let's start our exercise. I have my ball bouncing, okay? And I already created a new layer and I will keep it here. So what I want is to make this ball bouncing and play with staging. So I will create the idea that the ball is closer to the viewer or away to the viewer while it is bouncing. Of course, that also the scenario would help on creating this illusion, but now we are just focused on the animation. I will hide this ball because I don't need it. So I'll create a line, and remember that when we create the elements, and now I will just brush. So when we create something, and this is one element, right? And if we create another one and cross it, you remember that this is now a single element. We saw this before, but what we didn't see is that we can avoid this if we activate an option called object drawing. So if we click on this icon over here, and I will do the same thing, I have one element, and if I cross another element, they are independent, see? So these are not shapes, as you can see, these are drawing objects. Of course that I can access to this shape when I double click, and you see that here I have these little dots, so I can edit it as a shape. But the moment when I create them, they are not shapes. Of course that when we have this, we are always on time to break these apart into shapes. What does that mean? Is modify, break apart, is converting elements to shapes. Okay, so we can just do Control B, the same thing, and they are shapes. And now if I overlap them, they will act just like shapes. Okay, so I want a line, a red line, and I want it in object drawing. So I will not work with the Boolean operations, let's say like that. I want this here. I want both in the center. If you want the rulers, you can show them. Okay, you have here the rulers. Now I will create a new layer and I will drag my grid to this layer, and this layer is my grid. Let's resize this grid to be 300, 300. So now I want to squash this grid in order to make it at the center of our stage. So I will just drag a line and I want it here in the center. And now I'll bring back my layers. And now I want to squash like this. And now what I want is to distort the grid, but to distort the grid, it can't be a graphic, so I will break apart. So now I can press Ctrl to distort, and if I press also Shift, I will distort both sides at the same time. And there we go, we have our grid ready to simulate our ground. So now let's start animating in perspective. Let's unhide our ball and we can lock the other two layers. And before working here on my scene 1, I actually want to work inside here to have more bounces instead of only 3. So we need to make some changes here on this animation. And before doing anything else, I suggest you to correct this ball in order to be ready for further animations. What do I mean with this? Okay, we have some skewing here because this ball was going from the left to the right, and this is not the idea this time. I want this ball to bounce in depth, so I will not have this skewing. And another thing is our pivot points that are in the center. So if we change the squashing and stretching, we will have the issue of not having the ball on the ground. So let's correct that first. Pivot points and skewing. So the skewing will correct this to 0 and again this to 0 and 0. And now the pivot points. Oops. Something is not skewed. After this, we will create a reference to make our bouncings. This reference, it will help us keeping this ball bouncing for a certain number of frames. So considering that we will have an animation with 100 frames, for example, I will create a new layer. This will be our reference. If we want an animation, for example, with 100 frames, F5, and I want this ball here bouncing for this amount of time, one technique that you can use is creating a reference animation. And let's create a ball that will go from the bottom to the top, only moving once. And we will use that ball as reference for every higher point of this ball. So I will copy this ball and I will paste it here, but I will paste it in place with Ctrl+Shift+V. And this reference ball now, I will actually, well, I have here this line, but I want this line over there because I want the movement to start from here until, and now here at position 100, I will create another keyframe because I want the other position to be on the bottom of the stage. So here, okay, I will create a classic tween. What I want is to use that ball as reference, so I will now lock it and do something like this, so I will not get confused about which ball I'm working with. So the initial position is not this one, will be that one, okay? And since now the distance between the first position and the last position is bigger, let's add 2 keyframes here, because timing and spacing always work together, okay? So the ball goes down, and when the ball goes up, we should adjust the position of the ball according to the reference, okay? And this is the idea of having this reference layer. Every time the ball goes down, when the ball goes up, it should be there. And I was working with this before, so I created some guidelines for you, and I have in my PDF file specified what could be the higher points of the ball. It should be 1, 26, 46, and then the next one will be on 62 instead of 65. Here my ball will not be there, it should be there, okay? And it should be at 62, okay? So the next high point would be the 75. So here it would be another high point, F6, another high point would be on 85 or 86, and another one at 95, and another one at 100. These are my high points, okay? I will place the ball at these high points. And here on frame 100, the ball is on the ground, okay? And I can have it like not exactly on the ground. If I want to extend this, I will actually extend this too. And at this point, the ball would be as a reference almost on the ground, but not on the ground. And then here it will be on the ground. And to keep it more time on the ground, I can even add 2 more keyframes, and my animation will have a duration of 103. And here I will have classic tweens, so the ball goes up at this position, and now I have to adjust. Every time you change, I change the reference, so now I have to adjust the high points. And now I will make the contacts. So the contacts are this, and this. Okay, and now we will need to make also our stretches and squashes. So we have here stretch and squash goes up, and when it comes down, I don't have here stretches and squashes. I will make them 2 keyframes, because at this position it should be already a contact, and I will make it a little less intense. The same thing here, but here should be the other way, and here again the squash. So at this position it goes up, so I will put it a bit. So it should be here 105, 95, 95. Now here the ball goes a bit up and goes down, and here I will create an F6, and also here. And now this should be really slight, so something like 103 should be enough. Okay, so now we have to adjust our easings, okay, because we were creating new animations, but we were not considering the easings. So you will see that at the beginning the ball looks fine, but in the new clip frames that we just created, they need adjustments. So let's adjust the ease ins and ease out. So ease in here on the higher points, ease out when the ball in the last keyframe, when the ball releases the ground. Okay, I had some mistakes here, I had to correct them. Okay, let's see how it will look like when we make this animation. So now instead of having it from, oh, we have to remove the other ball. Oops. And now instead of having the ball right there, we will have it in that place. And I will now scale this ball to make it smaller, and I will place it there. And this animation doesn't have a duration of 64, but a duration of 103, remember? So let's make our ball until here, position 103. And if you want, you can keep the others, but I will actually hide it, but let's just keep it there. And pay attention to which position is defined on this loop. So which should be 103, that is our final position, right? Not our initial. So it starts on position 1. So let's place it there. And at position 1, it starts there. So let's see our animation first with the grid and then without the grid. Okay, so I think that it's working well. We are creating a good illusion of depth. And there we go, we have a good movement with this ball. Maybe we can also work with easings here. So I will make an ease out, so it will start faster and then it will go slower as the animation stops. And that's it. Thank you all for watching.